Most beautiful sky, I see how you change each day, and each day most beautiful sky, I see how you change each day, and each day remain most beautiful sky, I see how you change each day.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. My name is Chris, and I'm pleased to be your worship associate this morning. Even though we've closed the building to do our part in preventing the spread of the virus, we have remained connected and active. We are still a vibrant congregation with open minds, spirits, and hearts. I hope this moment finds you well. I'm thrilled to be bringing you another FirstU Pride service, something that has become an annual tradition. This Pride service is brought to you by FirstU's Embracing Diversity Committee. The EDC is a group of members of this congregation that are dedicated to making FirstU a welcoming place for everyone, and this includes our 2S LGBTQ+ members. EDC would love to have some new members, and this includes allies. Some other announcements. If you'd like information regarding FirstU, you can contact us through email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. That's welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. After Sunday services, please join us for a virtual hospitality hour at 11:30 a.m. If you'd like to be a part of that hospitality hour via Zoom, please see our website, www.firstunitarianottawa.ca, or our weekly newsletter, the UU, for information on how to do so. At this time, staff are working remotely and are monitoring emails during working hours. You will find their remote work phone numbers and direct emails on the staff directory page of our website. It is more important than ever to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter, to check our Facebook page and our web page for notices and updates. Our online calendar is as full as ever. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you're a part of our spiritual community. We hope you come back soon. This year marks 30 years since the very first Canadian Pride protest, which took place in August 1971 with 100 people marching on Parliament Hill. These activists brought a petition with demands for equal rights to the government. In 1974, a group of lesbian women were harassed by a customer at the Brunswick Tavern in Toronto and reacted by singing, "I enjoy being a dyke." They were arrested, assaulted by police, and charged for that. The media coverage of this event is credited with lighting a fire under the gay and lesbian rights movement in Canada. In 1981, Toronto police arrested 300 gay men, but the reaction to this raid, 3,000 protesters in the streets the next day, has been called Canada's Stonewall. Over the past decades, many members of 2S LGBTQ+ communities have fought hard for the rights we have today, with sexual orientation now a protected human rights group as of 1996 and gender identity protected as of 2017. To open our Pride service today, I'd like to present a special video.
Hi, I'm Jim Watson, Mayor of the City of Ottawa. It's my pleasure to bring greetings to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ottawa for your annual Pride service. Pride is about embracing diversity and inclusivity, and it's important to the Ottawa community and me personally. The annual Capital Pride Festival is always a vibrant and empowering celebration attended by those from the LGBTQ2+ community of the National Capital Region and far beyond. Thank you for all being strong, supportive members of the Pride community. I'd like to give my best wishes for a joyous Pride service. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. À la prochaine.
Chalice, chalice, burning bright, help remind us with your light of how we'd like to live each day, with love and truth helping lead the way.
For our Time for All Ages story this morning, my daughter Harmony reads to you a children's book called Desmond is Amazing.
Be Amazing, A History of Pride by Desmond is Amazing. Pictures by Dylan Glynn. Hi, my name is Desmond. I'm a drag kid and LGBTQ advocate. LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. I live in New York City, where I like to play video games, read, sing, collect toy trains, dance, and model. I enjoy going to school and have many friends. When I'm not being just Desmond, I like to dress up as characters of a different gender. This is called drag. My drag persona is Desmond is Amazing. My motto is, be yourself, always. I can be myself thanks to my parents, who let me be me. And thanks to the very brave people who fought to make it okay for me, or anyone like me, to be whoever we want to be. I'm lucky because most people accept me for who I am. In fact, lots of people think I'm pretty amazing. Some people don't, but you know what I always say? Pay the haters no mind. They'll never be as fierce as you and I. In the past, it wasn't always possible for people to dress or act or live any way they wanted. Throughout history, LGBTQ people have been punished, humiliated, attacked, and discriminated against. They could lose their jobs, be forced into hospitals, or even get arrested just for being who they were. The Stonewall Inn was one of the few safe spaces for LGBTQ people in New York City. However, the Stonewall Inn and other places like it were often raided and shut down by the police as a way to bully the LGBTQ community. On June 28, 1969, police officers invaded the Stonewall Inn. But people there were fed up with the way they were being treated, so they stood their ground. For several days, fighting took place at the Stonewall Inn, as thousands of people joined in to help support the LGBTQ community. This uprising became known as the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Riots were an important turning point in the history of LGBTQ people. They began to openly voice their opinions and fight for equal rights. They formed LGBTQ advocacy groups, published newspapers, and organized parades and marches. In 2009, President Barack Obama declared June LGBT Pride Month. He said the Stonewall Riots were a reason to commit to achieving equal justice under law for LGBT Americans. We look back on those who took a stand at the Stonewall Riots as heroes who should be celebrated for giving LGBTQ people like me the freedoms we enjoy today. On June 28, 1970, the Christopher Street Liberation Day March was held in New York City to commemorate the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Riots. It was the first LGBTQ pride event in the United States. Thousands of people gathered together and marched uptown on 6th Avenue, ending with a gay inn in Central Park's Sheep Meadow. The official slogan for the event became Pride. L. Craig Schoonmaker, a member of the march's planning committee, said, "A lot of people were very repressed. They were conflicted internally and didn't know how to come out and be proud. That's how the movement was most useful because they thought, maybe I should be proud." Soon marches were being held in other cities in the United States. Today, Pride is celebrated worldwide. In June 2015, I attended New York City's Pride March for the first time. I took my time choosing the perfect outfit to wear that would express my personality. I was overjoyed and enthusiastic when I arrived at the march. My parents were sure I would only walk a few blocks and want to quit, but I proved them wrong and danced the entire march route. I loved hearing people cheer. There were many smiles and even some happy tears. The next day, I awoke to find out that I had become a viral drag sensation. I have been dressing up in skirts, dresses, and tutus ever since I first discovered drag by watching the television show RuPaul's Drag Race. I thought RuPaul and the contestants were so beautiful and amazing, just like princesses. I said, I want to do that. My parents allowed me to explore dressing up and created colorful characters just like RuPaul. I can freely be the character Desmond is Amazing because of the hard work of generations of people in the LGBTQ community. But there is still work to be done. The next generation of LGBTQ advocates, like me, are ready to continue to fight for our rights, strive for equality, and promote acceptance. Whether you love drag, like I do, or sports, or science, or art, or computers, or reading, or math, or something else no one's even heard of, everyone should be free to feel amazing always. What makes you amazing? Dear readers, pride is a feeling of honor and self-respect. It is the feeling of being worthwhile. It is having self-esteem. We can all feel pride by expressing ourselves in a way that makes us happy or makes us feel beautiful, or in a way that feels right in our hearts. Simply put, self-expression is the art of being yourself always. Self-expression has no limits. You can be who you are no matter your age, race, orientation, identity, gender, financial status, class, disabilities, or abilities. You can like rap music or pop music. You can have long hair or short hair. You can wear dresses or shorts. There is no right or wrong way to be yourself. I want each and every one of you to express yourself today any way you want to. Today is your pride. With love, Desmond is amazing. Be yourself, always.
With open hearts, open arms, open minds.
This is the time in the service where we invite people to send in their personal joys and sorrows. We recognize these by placing stones in water and allowing the ripples to take their message out to the universe. A stone of sorrow this morning for Patricia on the death of her husband, Michael. A stone of congratulations to Janice, who recently celebrated her 92nd birthday. A stone of good wishes to Rosemary, who will be undergoing surgery. A stone of reminder that COVID is still with us and we must maintain our vigilance. A stone to remind us that there are still forest fires burning in BC and in Northern Ontario. A stone of sorrow for the devastation that the people of Haiti have undergone. And a stone of sorrow for the people of Afghanistan and the terrible situation that they are in. One last stone for all the joys and sorrows held in our hearts. We will now have a moment of silence.
To mark the 50th anniversary of the first gay rights protest in Canada, we thought it would be interesting to get a historical perspective of activism and experiences from the past 5 decades. We can celebrate all that has been achieved to bring us to where we are today. Yet, as the theme of Ottawa Capital Pride this year, We Still Demand, On Demande Encore, suggests, there is still more work to be done. There has been a strong backlash these days from those who are uncomfortable with change, those who perceive moving towards equity as a loss of their own privilege, and those who feel threatened by the advances made by equity-seeking groups. We will now hear from older members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. Thank you to the EDC members who helped these individuals share their stories with us today.
Good morning. I'm Carl Sonnen, and I sit on the FirstU Board of Directors. Imagine a dystopian time far in the future where the population is strictly controlled and heterosexual relationships are prohibited and only same-sex relationships are allowed, with children only being born under strict in vitro fertilization controls. Imagine that heterosexuality is criminalized and even a death sentence for some individuals. Seems preposterous and outrageous, doesn't it? And it is preposterous and outrageous. Now imagine what same-sex couples have experienced over the last 2,000 years for just expressing themselves the way nature and the Creator intended them to be and do. Now the following thing that I'm going to read comes by way of introduction from a senior gay man who joined the congregation in the federal public service in the 1980s and is now retired. Anarchists, communists, and others deemed un-American and subversive were considered security risks. Gay men and lesbians were included in this list by the U.S. State Department on the theory that they were susceptible to blackmail. In 1950, a Senate investigation noted in a report, and available from the Wikipedia article on the Stonewall Riots in 1969, paraphrased, says, "It is generally believed that those who engage in overt acts of perversion lack the emotional stability of normal persons," and said that all the government's intelligence agencies were in complete agreement that same-sex perverts in government constitute security risks. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation and police departments kept lists of known homosexuals and their favorite establishments and friends. The U.S. Post Office kept track of addresses where material pertaining to homosexuality was mailed. State and local governments followed suit. Bars catering to gay men and lesbians were shut down, and their customers were arrested and exposed in newspapers. Cities performed sweeps to rid neighborhoods, parks, bars, and beaches of gay people. They outlawed the wearing of opposite gender clothes, and universities expelled instructors suspected of being homosexual. In 1952, the American Psychiatric Association limited homosexuality as a mental disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Homosexuality remained in the DSM until 1974. The 1969 riots are considered the beginning of the gay liberation movement that led to annual celebrations of LGBTQ2+ pride worldwide. On November 28, 2017, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apologized to LGBTQ2+ Canadians in the House of Commons. Here are some of his consolidated remarks on that occasion. Imagine being subjected to laws, policies, and hiring practices that label you as different, as less than. Imagine having to fight for the basic right that your peers enjoy over and over again. Imagine being criminalized for being who you are. This is the truth for many Canadians and the devastating story of people who were branded criminals by the government. People who lost their livelihoods, and in some cases, their lives. These aren't distant practices of governments long forgotten. This happens systematically in Canada, with a timeline more recent than any of us would like to admit. Canada's laws made private and consensual sex between same-sex partners a criminal offense, leading to the unjust arrest, conviction, and imprisonment of Canadians. This criminalization had lasting impacts on employment, volunteering, and travel. Those arrested and charged were purposely and vindictively shamed. Their names appeared in newspapers in order to humiliate them and their family. Lives were destroyed, and tragically, lives were lost. This did not end in 1969 with the partial decriminalization of homosexual sex. Up until 1988, a 20-year-old gay man who had sex with another man could still be convicted of a crime. Laws and policies enacted by the government led to the legitimization of much more than inequality. They legitimized hatred and violence, and brought shame to those targeted. The state orchestrated a culture of stigma and fear around LGBTQ2+ communities, and in doing so destroyed people's lives. From the 1950s to the early 1990s, the Government of Canada exercised its authority in a cruel and unjust manner, undertaking a campaign of oppression against members and suspected members of the LGBTQ2+ communities. The goal was to identify these workers throughout the police service, including the Foreign Service, the military, and the RCMP, and persecute them. The thinking then was that all non-heterosexual Canadians would automatically be at an increased risk of blackmail by our adversaries, due to what was called character weakness. This thinking was prejudiced and flawed, and sadly, what resulted was nothing short of a witch hunt. Those who admitted they were gay were fired, discharged, or intimidated into resignation. They lost dignity, lost careers, and had their dreams, and indeed their lives, shattered. Many were blackmailed to report their peers, forced to turn against their friends and colleagues. It is our collective shame that you were so mistreated. It is our collective shame that this apology took so long. Many who suffered are no longer alive to hear these words. For that, we are truly sorry. We will ensure that systems are in place so these kinds of hateful practices are a thing of the past. Discrimination and oppression of LGBTQ2+ Canadians will not be tolerated anymore. With dialogue and with understanding, we will move forward together. Canada gets a little bit stronger every day that we choose to embrace and to celebrate who we all are in our uniqueness. We are a diverse nation, and we are enriched by the lives, experiences, and contributions of people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, and/or two-spirit. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Jay Cornstrah. I use he, him pronouns, and I describe myself as an old, white, cis gay male. I have no problem with that label because it reminds me of having privilege just by virtue of being white, cis, and male. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa for inviting me to participate in your Pride service. And how are we going to move ahead? If you bear with me, I'd like to take you on a journey of a few significant historical and personal events that occurred during my lifespan up to date. It was a cold November night in 1969 that a young 16-year-old me stood frozen in the driveway of my home in Brantford, Ontario. I stood there a long time staring at my house. The lights were lit in every room, which was an anomaly because my father was constantly complaining about the cost of electricity. Yep, even way back then. My hesitancy was that I didn't know what was going to hit me when I had the courage to open the side door and step over the threshold. Earlier that evening, I was in a play for a local community theatre company. I still can't remember the name of the play, but I can remember everything else so vividly. I was so excited that my mother and father were going to be there. I'd been in several plays before that night, high school plays and other community theatre productions, and my parents didn't bother to see any of them. Thus, I was so excited. While in the dressing room, getting ready, I saw my brother-in-law looking for me. He came to tell me that my parents couldn't be at the play because something came up. He said not to worry, your parents are okay, and then he added, please skip the opening night party and come home right after the play. And then he left. Gee, thanks for that. I didn't know what to think or feel and questioned why my parents would cop out, seeing me in a play on stage for the first time. I don't remember much of the performance. My mind was totally focused on what awaited me at home. I guess I did okay. I got through it. But there I was, timidly, opening the side door of my home, and stood there at the bottom landing of the steps leading to the kitchen. Looking up, I saw my father. He seemed gray, sallow, and so very, very, very old. He was standing at the top of those 4 steps, arms folded firmly across his chest. And before I could even ask what was happening, my father hissed, did you know your brother sleeps with men? Caught off guard, I had the wits to lie and replied, no. What are you talking about? In the meantime, I realized my sister, her husband, and their 10-month-old daughter were in the dining area behind my father. I guess they were talking about my brother who sleeps with men. I didn't see my mother, so I asked, where's Mom? My father said she was in their bedroom with the family doctor who was there to sedate her. It was like a surreal dream where everyone appeared to be either in shock, surprised, angry, but they all had a bit of hate for my brother. For a long time, all the dialogue just became a noise, excepting one vivid memory of my older sister expressing that she would never let my brother near her child. It appeared that my recently outed 19-year-old gay brother ran away when confronted with his homosexuality. I didn't see him for almost a year. There I was, 16 years old, and knowing I was different, and the scene I witnessed was a forebear to what my life would be like if they knew I was a boy who was sexually attracted to boys. Living in fear of being found out made it simple for me to not be true to myself, and I played the role of the good Christian young man, the good heterosexual son. I was still living in Brantford when a major historical event was happening in Ottawa, and only learned of it much later. This was when about 80 to 100 courageous people stood in the pouring rain 50 years ago on Parliament Hill, August 28, 1971. They came with a list of demands. This was the first ever protest of this kind in Canada. I was not there, but I benefited from the courage and fortitude of those 100 courageous people. They did something that had never been done before. They gathered on Parliament Hill to read a list of demands, the first time that Canadians had protested publicly for gay rights. This event was later named the We Demand protest. Among the list of demands is one that always resonated for me. We demand an end to homosexual discrimination. Although a small group, and quite wet, I suppose, little did they know that they had began a long journey of other people seeking rights for the LGBT community. This was the launch of expanding the width and depth of diverse communities who were either two-spirited, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, and all sorts of different diversities. Now let's go back 4 months earlier. In Brantford, sitting in the living room, I had been glued to our TV, or one TV I should say, watching news of something happening in New York City. I had to be careful to not let them see me watching the news of the Stonewall Riots, which in the early hours of June 28, 1969, New York City police raided the Stonewall Inn, a gay club in Greenwich Village. The raid sparked a riot among bar patrons and neighbors. Police roughly hauled employees and patrons out of the bar and put them in paddy wagons. Bricks were thrown, fires were lit, and this led to 6 days of protests and violent clashes with law enforcement. Intensely connected to what was happening, I knew I was watching history that really mattered to me. But I knew I would have to be alert and change channels if I heard any footsteps approaching the living room. Thus, I only got to watch bits and pieces of the news coverage of what is now described as the catalyst for the gay rights movement in the United States and around the world. And here I was playing the 16-year-old good heterosexual son. Another event that happened occurred in the fall of 1972 when I started my first year at York University. Finally, I was free to explore who I truly was, out of sight of the people back home, including my parents. I joined the York University Homophile Association. Comically, the acronym YUHA became somewhat like a calling card. Yoo-ha! I drove back and forth, going home to Brantford for weekends or holiday celebrations, but each trip the fiery gay man was left behind in my university dorm room. Later I found my stride and my netto, and I decided not to go home for summer break. I managed to get a good summer job as a cook assistant for Via Rail, and I shared an apartment with one of my brother's friends, but that's another story. In my second year, studying at York University, I decided to run for a position with the York University Student Federation, and I did nothing to hide my sexual orientation. That's when the name-calling and the abuse started. It was frightening and scary. There were plentiful threats of harm. I even stopped walking the university's underground pathways unless I was with a group of friends. I did get elected, but due to other factors, I resigned shortly afterwards. However, my favorite moment was while I was hanging about after speaking at a candidates' debate. I overheard a heterosexual couple discussing the debates, and I heard the woman say, "Now, I don't know about you, but the gay guy was the only one that made sense." He replied, "That's what I thought too." I left university in my second year to work full-time for Via Rail. Working for Via Rail saw me being in Montreal several times, but specifically between February 1975 to June 1976, while assigned to the Toronto-Montreal return turbo train. I also had to spend a lot of time overnight. I saw and I heard about Mayor Jean Drapeau's attempt to clean up the city in advance of the 1976 Olympics. The Club Baz in Ottawa, by the way, was also raided during this period of time, since there were to be Olympic events in the Ottawa region. Cleaning up. Is that something like sweeping the dust under the rug? I didn't get it, but I was not there. About a year later, on the night of October 22nd, 1977, Montreal police raided trucks in Le Mystique, 2 gay bars on Stanley Street. I would have been the 147th patron arrested if I had not fortuitously left Le Mystique to walk the 2 blocks to the bar trucks. I witnessed this raid, or what was actually, in my opinion, a military operation rather than a normal police intervention. I saw 50 or so police officers. They were wearing bulletproof vests. They had their guns drawn, including several carrying machine guns. I saw them go into the 2 bars simultaneously and arrested a total of 146 patrons, all homosexual men. I was there. The next day, I was among 2,000 people who took to the streets blocking the corner of St. Catherine Street West and Stanley Street to protest what had happened the night before. The peaceful protest quickly turned ugly when the police, I guess, decided to focus on, we need to clear the streets. Without warning, the crowd experienced a large contingency of police on motorcycles riding right into the crowd, clubbing protesters, who in turn threw beer bottles back at the police. I'd never before witnessed this type of malice from the police, who initiated this brutal attempt to rid the corner of the fags. Sadly, since then I have seen more than enough of police trolling of gays and harassing and beating up people of color, Indigenous people, and other people whom I guess they define as undesirable. I was there. February 5th, 1981, in my hometown of Toronto, police stormed 4 gay bathhouses in the city as part of what they called Operation Soap, and they arrested just under 300 men. The next evening, there was a rally, and I spoke to the organizers. They were hoping that maybe 300 people were going to be present at the corner of Yonge and Wellesley Street in Toronto. But it was close to 3,000 people who took to the streets to protest the raids. More rallies were held later in response to this injustice, and that's when the Right to Privacy Committee was born. This particular day is often referred to as Canada's Stonewall. I was there. There were many more horrendous attempts to quell down the homosexual movement. I can list a whole bunch, but I'll do it quickly. Edmonton, May 30th, 1981, police raided a bathhouse. 56 men were arrested and charged. Another 6 men, owners and employees, were charged with being keepers of a common body house. A local TV station ran the names of those found at the Pisces Health Spa, outing the men publicly in the city of Edmonton. It was also 1981 that I participated in what might be called the first Pride celebrations in Toronto. Being so soon after the bath raids, what was about to become a parade actually was a protest march. Dykes on bikes were at the front of this march. I remember walking past the 42nd Division at Toronto's police services. This was the same division that orchestrated the bath raids. Oh, it was so easy chanting as we passed by FU 52. April 21st, 1982, Glad Day Bookstore, the oldest surviving LGBT bookstore in Canada, was targeted by the Toronto Police Services in a series of raids, finally charging the owner with possession of obscene materials for purposes of resale. December 8, 1986, Canada Customs seized more than 500 books and magazines destined for the bookstore Little Sisters in Vancouver. They reached back to an 1847 Customs Act, which prohibited the importation of books with immoral or indecent character, never having defined what immoral or indecent character actually meant. September 14th. A long time later, in year 2000, 6 male officers from the Toronto Police raided Club Toronto during an all-female queer and trans event known as the Pussy Palace. This event resulted in protests and pickets of the Toronto Police 52nd Division once again. As an example of the gains made by queer advocacy over the years, I'm pleased to say in the year 2002, an Ontario provincial court judge ruled the police were wrong to raid the party, and then in a 2005 class action lawsuit and complaint to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, this resulted in a $350,000 settlement. I was in Ottawa during that September 2000 raid, having just moved here 8 days before the raid to take on the responsibility of my new job as Executive Director of Bruce House, a supportive housing organization providing care and compassion to people living with HIV, AIDS. So now that I mentioned coming to Ottawa and what I was doing, I'm going to briefly share some personal events that has led to what is called my lived experience. It may seem chaotic going back to different time frames, but that's the way of life, and that's the way of a failing memory. April 16th, 1981 was the first day of a vacation in San Francisco. It was also the first day I met my soulmate, Larry. After a year of a long-distance relationship, me going to San Francisco and Larry coming to Toronto, Larry decided to move to Canada to be with me. August 22nd, 2 years later, 1983, I was told I had gay-related immunological disease, GRID. The acronym sounded dirty, but I guess it was a step up from gay cancer. It came as no surprise that in 1985, with the discovery of HIV and the first antibody tests were introduced in Canada, my new acronyms went from GRID to plenty more acronyms, such as HIV, positive sign, PLWHIV-AIDS, people living with HIV/AIDS, or quite simply, PHA, person having AIDS. In January 1996, I lost my best friend from complications due to AIDS. It was just a month later my mother succumbed to colon cancer, exactly 1 year and 1 day after my father died in 1995. But then on September 22nd, still in the year 1996, after 14 and a half beautiful years together with Larry also left this world and AIDS struck once again. These personal losses shook me to the core, and emerging from a major 6-month depression, I marked my subsequent years as an AIDS activist. But that too is a story for another time. Today, as a gay man, I could list so many more events, but the point I really wanted to make with all these historical and personal references is that these events shaped who I was, who I became, who I am today, and who I might be tomorrow. Since moving to Ottawa, I've been an active participant within the 2S LGBTQ+ communities, and I pluralize communities, and so nicely treated by the welcoming nature of the people I met from my first days living here in Ottawa. Ottawa has been kind to me, more than generous in the recognition of my advocacy and activism. I'm proud that I was so active within the community, and prouder still that even after my retirement in 2018, I remain a social justice advocate. I understood, right from the hop, that not all people were afforded the same level of equity that was afforded to me, a white, cis, gay male. Therefore, I will continue to support the fight for the transgender and Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. My life as an aging gay man, now living in Ottawa for the last 21 years, has had its trials and tribulations, but I'd like to thank Ottawa because this is the longest time I've ever lived in one city. I now think of Ottawa as my true home. Before I close, I'd like to remind everyone that 50 years ago, my heroes went to Parliament Hill with "We Demand." Now, 50 years later, I think it's quite fitting that this year's Capital Pride theme is "We Still Demand." Thank you.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than home? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than home? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than home? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
This is the time in our service when we usually accept the offering. You may go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how you might keep up with your pledge or make a donation during these times. We give these gifts freely. We receive these gifts gratefully. We dedicate these gifts to the work of our congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, and loving one another. Our closing reading is a poem called A Poem for Pulse by Jameson Fitzpatrick. Last night I went to a gay bar with a man I love a little. After dinner, we had a drink. We sat in the far back of the big backyard. And he asked, "What will we do when this place closes?" "I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon," I said, though the crowd was slow for a Saturday. And he said, "Yes, but one day, where will we go?" He walked me the half-block home and kissed me goodnight on my stoop. Properly, not too quick. Close enough our stomachs pressed together, in a second sort of kiss. I live next to a bar that's not a gay bar. We just call those bars, I guess. And because it is popular, and because I live on a busy street, there are always people who aren't queer people on the sidewalk, on weekend nights. Just people, I guess. They were there last night. As I kissed this man, I was aware of them watching, and of myself wondering whether or not they were just. But I didn't let myself feel scared. I kissed him exactly as I wanted to, as I would have without an audience. because I decided many years ago to refuse this fear, an act of resistance. I left the idea of hate out on the stoop and went inside to sleep, early and drunk and happy. While I slept, a man went to a gay club with 2 guns and killed 49 people. Today, in an interview, his father said he had been disturbed recently by the sight of 2 men kissing. What a strange power to be cursed with for the proof of men's desire to move men to violence? What's a single kiss? I've had kisses no one has ever known about, so many kisses without consequence. But there is a place you can't outrun, whoever you are. There will be a time when it might be a bullet, suddenly, the sound of it, many. 1 man, 2 guns, 50 dead, 2 men kissing. Last night, I can't get away from imagining it, them, the people there to dance and laugh and drink, who didn't believe they'd die, who couldn't have. How else can you have a good time? How else can you live? There must have been 2 men kissing for the first time last night, and for the last. And 2 women too, and 2 people who were neither. We must love one another whether or not we die. Love can't block a bullet, but neither can it be shot down. And love is, for the most part, what makes us. In Orlando and in Brooklyn and in Kabul. We will be everywhere, always. There's nowhere else for us or you to go. Anywhere you run in this world, love will be there to greet you. Around any corner, there might be 2 men kissing. Thanks for joining us for our annual Pride service. Go in peace, go in love, go in joy, and may all be well.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Quod vidas mori de justitia, tenurimur cielum potuum, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi. Most beautiful sky, I see how you change each day, and each day remain. Most beautiful sky, I see how you change and each day remain most beautiful sky. I see how you change each day, and each day remain most beautiful sky. I see how you change each day, and each day